Gia walked with her head down through the gleaming halls of Galactic Academy. The massive space station called Nexus was home to the best school in 3 sectors. Tall aliens from 20 different worlds moved around her. Gia was small next to them. At 16, she had reached her full height, but even the shortest alien students stood a head taller. "Look out, fragile goods coming through," called Tak, a blue-skinned Valorian with 4 arms. His friends laughed as he pretended to put up warning signs around Gia. Humans break so easily. Gia kept walking. She didn't look up. After 6 months at the academy, she knew better. There were only 7 humans among 3,000 students. All of them got teased, but Gia got the worst of it. "I heard humans only use 10% of their brains," said one of Tak's friends loud enough for Gia to hear. "That's being nice. I'd say 5% for this one," Tak replied. The morning bell rang. Gia hurried to her first class, Advanced Physics with Professor Do. The old Tellurian had gray skin and wise eyes that had seen hundreds of years of history. He was one of the few teachers who treated Gia with respect. Gia took her seat in the back row. The desks adjusted to each student's body type. For the bigger aliens, they grew larger. For Gia, the desk shrank down. One more reminder that she didn't quite fit in. "Today we study the physics of light-speed combat," Professor Do said. He waved his hand, and the room filled with stars. The hologram system made it feel like they were floating in space. Tak raised one of his 4 hands. "Professor, should the humans even take this lesson? Their ships can barely reach half-light speed. Their brains can't process fast enough for real combat." Several students laughed. Gia's face burned hot, but she stayed quiet. Professor Do looked at Tak with disappointment. History shows unwise judgment of other species. Many empires fell because they underestimated humans. Gia felt Professor Do's eyes on her for a moment too long. She looked up and met his gaze. Something passed between them, a look of knowing that confused her. As the lesson went on, Gia took careful notes. While other students used neural links to record the lesson, Gia wrote by hand in her notebook. Another thing that made her different. In the Battle of Orion Belt, Professor Do explained, 3 light cruisers used this maneuver to trap a battleship twice their size. The stars in the room moved, showing ships in formation. Gia watched, but in her mind, she suddenly saw a different battle. Different ships. For a moment, she wasn't in the classroom, but standing on a bridge, giving orders. The vision was so real she gasped. "Is something wrong, Gia?" Professor Do asked. Everyone turned to look at her. Gia shook her head. "No, sir. Sorry." After class, Gia walked to her small room in the human section of the dormitories. She sat on her bed and pulled out a small metal disc from under her pillow. The medallion was old, made of a metal not found in this part of the galaxy. It had strange markings and a symbol she didn't recognize. Gia didn't remember where she got it. It was just always with her. When she held it, she felt safe, protected. A knock on her door made her quickly hide the medallion. "Come in," she called. Nari, a Corlean girl with violet skin and large eyes, entered. She was in most of Gia's classes and sometimes hung out with Tak, though she never joined in when he teased Gia. "The flight simulator practice is starting in 10 minutes, Nari said. "I thought you might forget." "Thanks," Gia said with surprise. Nobody usually reminded her of anything. As Gia gathered her things, she caught Nari looking at her curiously. "What?" Gia asked. "Nothing," Nari said. "Just, sometimes you get this look. Like you've seen things nobody else has." She shrugged. "Anyway, hurry up. You know how Tak gets when people are late." As they walked to the simulators, Gia touched the hidden pocket where she kept the medallion. For a second, she remembered a fleet of ships, a great battle, and stars exploding around her. Then it was gone, and she was just a human girl again, heading to class where more taunts waited. That night, Gia dreamed of stars. Not the peaceful stars she saw from her small window, but stars filled with fire and ships. In her dream, she stood tall on a bridge. People waited for her orders. She was not 16, but much older, with lines on her face and gray in her hair. "Admiral, they're coming in from Sector 7. Someone said. "Admiral." Jia woke up sweating. The dream felt so real. She sat up in bed and touched her face. Young skin, no wrinkles, just a strange dream. But the dreams came every night now. Each one showed her commanding ships, planning battles, or speaking to crowds. In each dream, she was older, respected, and called Admiral. The next day in history class, Jia tried to stay awake. She had slept poorly after the dreams. "Today we study the rebellion of Sector 9, said Teacher Kim, an older human woman. She was one of the few human teachers at the academy. This conflict happened 70 years ago and ended the rule of the Hadean Empire. At the word Hadean Empire, Jia felt a wave of anger so strong it made her dizzy. She gripped her desk to steady herself. The teacher continued. The rebellion was led by many species working together. But legends say a human commander called the Strategist created the battle plans that won the war. Tak laughed loudly. A human, planning battles that defeated the greatest empire. That's just human propaganda. Teacher Kim raised an eyebrow. The historical records are clear. Tak. The strategist was human and female. Her plans won the war. If she was so great, why does nobody know her name? Asked another student. She disappeared after the war, Teacher Kim explained. Some say she died. Others say she went into hiding. All we know is that without her, the rebellion would have failed. As Teacher Kim showed images of old battles, Jia felt strange. She knew these battles, not from books, but as if she had been there. When an image of the Hadean emperor appeared, Jia's hand formed a fist without her meaning to. The emperor died in the final battle, Teacher Kim said. His last words were, "She will regret this victory." A memory flashed in Jia's mind. Standing before a tall alien with red eyes, hearing those exact words, Jia gasped and dropped her tablet. Everyone looked at her. "Sorry," she mumbled, picking it up. After class, Jia went to the school library. She searched for information about the strategist. There wasn't much, just battle records and a few witness accounts. No pictures, no name. One report caught her eye. The strategist underwent experimental medical treatment after being injured in the Battle of Cryon Gate. Jia touched her right side, feeling a pain that wasn't really there. Another memory. Lying on a medical bed, doctors working to save her life. Interested in old wars. Jia jumped. Professor Do stood behind her, looking at her screen. "Just curious," Jia said. The strategist was remarkable. Professor Do said quietly, "I was very young during the rebellion, but I remember the hoax she brought." He looked at Jia strangely. "You remind me of someone I once knew." Before Jia could answer, her medallion grew warm against her skin. She had kept it in her pocket. Now it seemed to pulse with energy. "I should go," she said quickly. In her room, Jia took out the medallion. It glowed faintly now, something it had never done before. She examined it closely and found a small button she hadn't noticed. When she pressed it, nothing happened. That night, the dreams were worse. She saw herself giving orders to destroy the Hadean homeworld. She heard herself saying, "They left us no choice." She woke up crying. The next day, Teacher Kim announced a special project. You will work in groups to study a historical battle. You will analyze tactics and present your findings. Jia hoped to work alone, but Teacher Kim had other plans. "Jia, you will work with Tak and Neri. Your battle is Cryon Gate, the turning point of the rebellion." Tak groaned. Neri looked uncomfortable. Jia felt a chill. Cryon Gate, the battle where the strategist was injured. The battle she had just read about. The battle she somehow remembered. "We have to meet in the library after classes. Neri told Jia the next day. Tak doesn't want to, but we need to start the project. Jia nodded. She didn't want to work with Tak either, but she had no choice. In the library that afternoon, Tak sat with his arms crossed. All four of them. Let's get this over with, he said. I'll do the presentation. Neri, you do the research. The human can. I don't know. Make it look pretty. That's not fair, Neri said. We should all do equal work. What can she add? Tak pointed at Jia. Humans don't understand space battles. Jia stayed quiet, but inside she felt angry. Images flashed in her mind. Battle plans, ship movements, strategies she somehow knew would work. The Battle of Cryon Gate was a trap, she said suddenly. Tak and Neri looked at her. What? Tak asked. The Hadean forces thought they were attacking a weak point, but the rebels wanted them to attack there. Jia wasn't sure how she knew this, but the words came easily. They hid their main fleet behind the third moon. When the Hadean forces moved in, they were surrounded. Neri's eyes widened. How do you know that? We haven't even started the research. Jia realized her mistake. I'd read about it. Somewhere. Tak looked suspicious. Where exactly? I don't remember, Jia said. Let's just look up the official records. They searched the library database. The information they found matched what Jia had said, but with less detail. It says here that the rebel ships used a new formation never seen before. Neri read from her screen. The Hadean forces didn't know how to counter it. The diamond net, Jia whispered. What did you say? Tak asked. Nothing, Jia said quickly. But it was too late. The name wasn't in the official record. There was no way Jia should know it. Diamond net, Tak typed it into the search. One result appeared. A classified military document that needed special access. How did you know that name? Tak's voice was different now. Not mocking, but serious. I don't know, Jia admitted. It just came to me. From across the library, Professor Do watched them. When Jia looked up, he turned away and left the room. Later that evening, Professor Do entered a secure room deep in the station. He activated a communication device that was not part of the school's normal systems. She's beginning to remember, he said to someone on the other end. The protocol is failing. How much does she know? Asked a voice. Fragments only. But the memories are coming faster now. Keep watching her. We need to know if she's still the same person. And if she's not? Professor Do asked. Then we must act quickly, the voice replied. She is too dangerous to leave uninformed. Back in her room, Jia couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the battle they were studying. She could see it clearly in her mind. Ships moving in perfect formation, orders being given, the moment when victory was certain. The medallion glowed brighter now. Jia held it tight, finding comfort in its warmth. A soft knock on her door startled her. She hid the medallion under her pillow. Come in, she called. Neri entered, looking nervous. I found something strange, she said. About the Battle of Cryon Gate. She showed Jia her tablet. On it was an old image, damaged and blurry. It showed the bridge of a ship. In the center stood a woman in a commander's uniform. Her face wasn't clear, but something about her stance seemed familiar to Jia. This is the only known image of the strategist, Neri said. I had to hack 3 security levels to find it. Jia stared at the image. Why are you showing me this? Because you knew things you shouldn't know, Neri said. And because, she hesitated, because I've seen how the teachers look at you, especially Professor Do, like they're waiting for something to happen. Jia felt cold. That's crazy. Maybe, Neri said. But I'm watching you now too. After Neri left, Jia took out the medallion again. This time, when she pressed the hidden button, something happened. A tiny hologram appeared above it, a star map showing a battle formation. The same formation used at Cryon Gate, the diamond net. Jia stared at the star map floating above her medallion. She had never seen technology like this. The tiny stars moved, showing ships in battle formation. At the center was a larger ship marked with a symbol she recognized, the same symbol on her medallion. A knock at her door made her jump. She quickly pressed the button to turn off the hologram and hid the medallion in her pocket. "Who is it?" she called. "It's me. Open up," Tak's voice answered. Jia opened the door. Tak stood there with a serious look on all three of his eyes. "We need to talk about the project," he said, pushing past her into the room. "Now." "It's late," Jia said. Tak ignored her. "I did more research on Cryon Gate. The battle tactics used there were never used before or since. They were created by the strategist specifically for that battle." "So," Jia tried to sound normal, but her heart beat fast. "So how did you know about them?" Tak asked. "That information is classified. I told you, I must have read about it somewhere." Tak stepped closer. "No one reads about it. That's the point. It's secret." The medallion in Jia's pocket grew warm. Too warm. She felt it burning through her clothes. "I need you to leave," she said. "I'm not finished," Tak began. Suddenly, the medallion burst with light. It fell from Jia's pocket and hit the floor. A huge star map filled the room, covering the walls and ceiling. Battle formations, ship movements, planets, and stars, all glowing bright blue around them. Tak's mouth opened in shock. "What is this?" Jia grabbed the medallion from the floor, but it was too late. The hologram stayed on, showing detailed battle plans and ship positions. "Is that Cryon Gate?" Tak asked, looking at the display. Jia nodded slowly. She could not deny it now. "These are military-grade projections," Tak said. "Only fleet commanders have access to this kind of technology." The door opened again. Neri stood there, eyes wide at the glowing room. "I heard voices and..." She stopped when she saw the star map. "By the void. Is that what I think it is?" Jia finally managed to turn off the medallion. The room went dark except for the normal lights. "You need to explain this," Tak said. "Now." Jia sat on her bed, holding the medallion tight. "I can't explain it. I don't know why I have this or how I know things about the battle." "That's a rebellion command key," Neri said, pointing to the medallion. "They're supposed to be destroyed or in museums." "How do you know that?" Tak asked her. "My grandfather was in the rebellion," Neri said. "He told me stories. Command keys were only given to the highest officers." They both looked at Jia. She felt trapped. "I've always had it," she said. "I thought it was just a keepsake." "No one just has a command key," Neri said. "Especially not one that still works." A memory flashed in Jia's mind. Standing on a ship bridge, giving the medallion to someone, saying, "Keep this safe. If I don't return, destroy it." "Someone is coming," Tak suddenly said, his ears twitching. His species had excellent hearing. The door burst open. 2 people in black uniforms rushed in. They weren't school staff. Their uniforms had no markings, and they wore masks that hid their faces. "Secure the artifact and the girl," one said. The other reached for Jia, but Tak moved quickly. He used his 4 arms to push the intruder back. "Run," he shouted to Jia and Neri. Jia clutched the medallion and ran. Neri followed close behind. They raced down the hallway toward the emergency stairs. "Why are they after you?" Neri asked as they ran. "I don't know," Jia said, but a part of her did know. The medallion was valuable. And somehow, she was too. They reached the stairs and started down. Above them, they heard shouts and the sound of fighting. "Tak," Jia said, worried. "He can handle himself," Neri said. "We need to find Professor Do." "Why him?" "Because he's been watching you. He knows something," Neri said. "And right now, we need answers." Jia and Neri ran through the quiet hallways of the school. It was late, and most students were in their rooms. They'd reached Professor Doe's office, but it was empty. Where would he be at this hour? Nari wondered. Jia closed her eyes. A memory surfaced, a hidden room on the lower level of the station, used for secure communications during the war. Level B, Section 12, Jia said, opening her eyes. There's a room there. How do you know that? Nari asked. I just do, Jia replied. She was tired of questioning the knowledge that kept appearing in her mind. They took the emergency stairs down to Level B. The hallways here were older, from when the station was first built. Few students ever came to this level. Section 12 should be this way, Jia said, turning left. They found a door marked Maintenance Only. Jia placed her hand on the scanner beside it. She didn't expect anything to happen, but the door slid open. How did you do that? Nari asked, amazed. I don't know, Jia whispered. Inside was a small room with old communication equipment. Professor Doe sat at a console, talking to someone on a secure channel. He turned when they entered, his eyes wide with surprise. Jia, how did you find this place? How did you get in? People are after her, Nari said before Jia could answer. Men in black uniforms. They tried to take her in her room. Professor Doe stood quickly. The Neo-Hadean movement, he said. They found you sooner than we expected. Neo-Hadean, Jia repeated. You mean followers of the old empire? Yes, Professor Doe said. They've been rebuilding in secret for years, and now they've come for you, just as we feared. Why would they want me? Jia asked, though deep inside, she was beginning to understand. Professor Doe looked at her with sad eyes. Because of who you are, Admiral Song. The name hit Jia like a lightning bolt. Admiral Song. Images flooded her mind. Battles won, speeches given, medals pinned to her chest. She saw herself, older and confident, standing on the bridge of a massive ship. She remembered giving orders that destroyed the Hadean fleet. She remembered watching their emperor die. No, Jia whispered, backing away. That's not possible. The rebellion was 70 years ago. I'm 16. Your body is 16, Professor Doe said gently. Your mind and soul are much older. What are you talking about? Nari asked, confused. After the war, Professor Doe explained, Admiral Jia Song, chief strategist of the rebellion, was badly injured. The only way to save her was experimental rejuvenation therapy. It worked better than expected. It didn't just heal her, it made her young again. But my memories, Jia said. You chose to have them suppressed, Professor Doe said. You wanted a normal life after a century of war. Memory implants gave you a new identity as a young student. The treatment was meant to last, but it's breaking down now. Your true memories are returning. Jia looked at her hands, young hands that had once commanded fleets. I'm the strategist, she whispered. Yes, Professor Doe nodded. The most brilliant military mind in 5 sectors. The woman who overthrew the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. Neri stared at Jia in shock. But she's just a girl. No, said a voice from the doorway. She's a legend. Tak stood there, his clothes torn from fighting. His face was different now, respectful, even awed. I got away from them, he said. But more are coming. They're searching the whole school. How did you find us? Nari asked. I followed you, Tak said. He looked at Jia. I needed to know the truth. Professor Doe moved to another console. We don't have much time. The memory blocks are failing completely now. He pressed some buttons. This might hurt, Admiral, but it will speed up the process. You need to remember everything if we're going to survive. He pressed a final button, and Jia screamed as pain shot through her head. Memories poured in like a flood. Her whole life, her real life, rushing back at once. When the pain faded, she stood straighter. Her eyes were different now. Older, wiser, more confident. My name, she said in a voice that commanded respect, is Admiral Jia Song, and we are in serious trouble. We need to move, Admiral Gia said. Her voice was still young, but her eyes held the wisdom of someone who had lived for over a century. The Neo-Hadean agents will find this room soon. Where can we go? Nari asked. The whole station will be looking for us. Not the whole station, Professor Doe said. I have friends here, old soldiers who fought in the rebellion. A loud alarm began to sound throughout the school. Attention all students and staff, came the principal's voice over the speakers. This is not a drill. We are entering lockdown. Return to your rooms and lock your doors. Repeat, this is not a drill. They're using the lockdown to search for us without causing panic, Gia said. She touched the medallion, which hung around her neck now. This command key can still access old rebellion security systems. We can use them to see where the agents are. She pressed the button on the medallion. A hologram map of the school appeared, showing small red dots moving through the hallways. There, Gia pointed. 12 agents, moving in teams of 2. 3 teams are heading this way. How do we get past them? Tak asked. Gia studied the map. Service tunnels. They run behind the walls, for maintenance droids. I can access them. You remember the station layout? Nari asked. I helped design it, Gia said. After the war, Nexus Station was built as both a school and a secret rebellion base, in case the Hadean forces ever returned. She moved to a wall panel and pressed a hidden switch. A small door opened, revealing a narrow tunnel. This way, she said. Stay close and stay quiet. They crawled through the dusty tunnel. It was tight for Tak with his 4 arms, but he managed. They could hear people searching the rooms they passed. Why do they want you so badly? Tak whispered. Because I know their secrets, Gia said. As the strategist, I studied the Hadean Empire for decades. I know their battle plans, their bases, their weaknesses. But the Empire fell 70 years ago, Nari said. The Neo-Hadeans want to bring it back, Professor Doe explained. If they're making their move now, it means they're ready for war. They reached a junction in the tunnel. Gia checked the map again. We need to go 2 levels down, she said. There's a hidden dock with emergency ships. As they turned a corner, they came face to face with a maintenance droid. Before it could sound an alarm, Tak grabbed it with all 4 arms and pulled out its power core. Nice move, Gia said approvingly. Tak looked embarrassed. I used to take these apart for fun. They continued through the tunnels. Gia moved with growing confidence, her body remembering skills her young mind had forgotten. When they reached a steep drop, she climbed down with the ease of a trained soldier. I still can't believe it, Nari whispered to Tak as they followed. Yesterday, she was just a bullied human girl. No, Tak said quietly. We just thought she was. They reached a large ventilation shaft. As they crawled through it, they heard voices below. Spread out and find them, a harsh voice ordered. The girl is top priority. The old Tellurian professor is secondary. Kill the others if necessary. Gia signaled for everyone to be silent. They crawled past the grate slowly. Suddenly, the grate gave way beneath Professor Doe. He fell into the room below with a crash. Agents immediately surrounded him. Run, he shouted up to them. Get to the dock. We can't leave him, Nari said. We won't, Gia replied. Her eyes scanned the room below, calculating angles and positions. Tak, when I give the signal, drop down at the far side of the room. Create a distraction. Nari, stay close to me. Gia pulled a small device from her medallion, a compact stun weapon that had been hidden inside. Ready? She asked. Tak nodded. Now. Tak dropped through the opening, landing with a roar that startled the agents. At the same moment, Gia and Nari dropped on the opposite side. Gia fired the stun weapon with perfect aim, hitting 2 agents immediately. The fight was chaotic, but quick. Tak used his 4 arms to great advantage, throwing agents aside. Jia moved with the skill of a trained fighter, her body remembering what her mind had forgotten. When it was over, all 6 agents lay unconscious. "That was amazing," Neri said, helping Professor Do to his feet. "That was just the beginning," Jia said grimly. "We need to reach that dock. The real fight is still coming." They reached the hidden dock after an hour of careful movement through the station. It was a small bay with 3 old ships inside. The dock had been sealed for decades, but Jia's medallion unlocked the heavy doors. "These ships still work?" Nari asked, looking at the dusty vessels. "They should," Jia said. "They were kept ready in case we ever needed to escape quickly." They entered the largest ship. Inside, it was dark and cold. Jia went straight to the control panel and placed her hand on it. The ship hummed to life, lights coming on one by one. "Welcome back, Admiral Song," said a computer voice. "It remembers you," Tak said in wonder. "Of course it does," Professor Do said. This was her command shuttle. Jia sat in the pilot's seat, her hands moving over the controls with practiced ease. Memories continued to flood back, flying missions, escaping enemy territory, planning attacks from this very chair. "We should be safe here for now," she said. "This dock doesn't appear on the station's official maps." She turned to face the others. "It's time I told you everything." They gathered in the ship's small meeting room. Jia touched her medallion, and it projected images as she spoke. "My name is Jia Song," she began. "I was born 127 years ago on Earth, in a place called Korea. I joined the Galactic Navy at 18 and rose through the ranks quickly." The hologram showed a much younger Jia in a simple uniform. "When the Hadean Empire began conquering worlds, I developed new tactics to fight them. They called me the strategist. For 50 years, I led the rebellion against the Empire." Images showed battles, star maps, and Jia growing older with each victory. "In the final battle at Hadean Prime, I was badly injured. The doctors said I would die, but there was an experimental treatment, cellular rejuvenation. It didn't just heal me, it made me young again." The hologram showed Jia on a medical bed, her body changing, becoming younger. "After the war, I was tired. A century of fighting had taken its toll. I asked for my memories to be suppressed. I wanted to live as a normal person, to experience life without war." Jia looked down at her young hands. "The memory blocks were supposed to last for 20 years. Then I would remember everything slowly. But something went wrong. They're breaking down too quickly." "Why would the Neo-Hadeans want you now?" Nari asked. "The war ended so long ago." "Because I know things," Jia said. "Secret things about the Hadean Empire, their hidden bases, their weapon caches, their emergency protocols. Things that were never put in any record. And they want to use those things to rebuild the Empire," Professor Do added. Tak had been quiet, but now he spoke up. "My grandfather served in the rebellion. His name was Jun." Jia's eyes widened. "Commander Jun of the 7th Fleet. He was one of my best officers." Tak nodded, his eyes filled with emotion. He told stories about the strategist, about how she cared for her soldiers, how she never sent them into a battle she hadn't planned perfectly. "I tried my best," Jia said softly. "We still lost good people." "He said you saved millions of lives with your plans," Tak said. "He said without you, the rebellion would have failed." Jia stood up and walked to a small locker. She opened it with her medallion and pulled out an old uniform, dark blue with gold trim and the symbol of the rebellion on the chest. "I never thought I'd wear this again," she said. "What do we do now?" Nari asked. "We need to warn the old rebellion leaders," Jia said. "If the Neo-Hadeans are making their move, we need to be ready." "How?" Professor Do asked. "Most of the old network is gone." Jia smiled for the first time since regaining her memories. "Not all of it." She held up her medallion. "This isn't just a command key. It's a beacon. And I just activated it." "What does that mean?" Tak asked. It means, Jaya said, that the old fleet is coming. My fleet. 3 hours passed as they waited in the hidden dock. Jia now wore her old uniform. It was too big for her teenage body, but she had adjusted it as best she could. She stood taller in it, her movements more confident. How long until your fleet arrives? Nari asked. They were hidden in the mist nebula, Jia said. If they left immediately after receiving my signal, they should be here soon. A small light began blinking on Jia's control panel. What's that? Tak asked. Proximity alert, Jia said, moving to the screen. Someone's found the dock. The main door to the dock began to open. Everyone tensed, ready for Neo-Hadean agents to pour in. Instead, a single figure entered, a tall woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. Teacher Kim, Nari exclaimed. The history teacher walked quickly to their ship. Jia opened the door to let her in. The whole station is looking for you, Teacher Kim said. She stopped when she saw Jia in her uniform. So it's true. You remember who you are. You knew? Jia asked. I suspected, Teacher Kim said. I fought in the later battles of the rebellion. I never met you, but I saw recordings of your speeches. What's happening in the school? Professor Do asked. Chaos, Teacher Kim replied. The Neo-Hadean agents have taken over the command center. They've told everyone you're dangerous terrorists. Most students are locked in their rooms, but some are being questioned. We need to help them, Jia said. How? Tak asked. There are only 5 of us. 6, actually, came a new voice. They turned to see a tall, thin alien standing in the doorway of the ship. He had pale green skin and wore the uniform of a school janitor. Wreck, Professor Do exclaimed. I thought you were dead. Almost was, old friend, the alien said. He looked at Jia and smiled. Good to see you again, Admiral. Captain Wreck, Jia said, recognizing him. You've aged well. Better than you, Wreck laughed. You got younger. Who else is here? Jia asked. How many of the old crew are on the station? 12 that I know of, Wreck said. We've been watching over you for years, taking turns. When your memory started to return, we alerted the fleet. A loud boom shook the station. Alarms began to sound. What was that? Nari asked, frightened. Jia checked the sensors. Ships have arrived. But they're not mine. Her face grew grim. Neo-Hadean warships. 3 of them. They're attacking the school. Tak asked in disbelief. They want me badly enough to risk it, Jia said. She pressed buttons on the console. We need to evacuate the students. Another boom rocked the station. The lights flickered. That hit was close to the main dormitories, Teacher Kim said with worry. Jia's face hardened. We can't wait any longer. She turned to Wreck. Gather the old crew. We need to retake the command center. With what weapons? Tak asked. Jia opened a hidden compartment in the wall. Inside were various weapons, blasters, stun batons, and small explosives. I always plan ahead, she said, handing them out. The ship's communication system suddenly crackled to life. Attention Nexus Station, said a harsh voice. This is Commander Vex of the Neo-Hadean forces. Surrender Admiral Jia Song to us immediately, or we will destroy the station section by section. They're bluffing, Tak said hopefully. Another explosion rocked the station, stronger than before. No, they're not, Jia said grimly. She picked up a blaster. Let's move. They left the ship and headed for the station's main levels. As they moved through the corridors, they found frightened students huddled in groups. Stay in your rooms, Teacher Kim told them. Lock your doors. When they reached the main hall, they saw chaos. Parts of the ceiling had collapsed. Emergency lights flashed red warnings. The command center is 3 levels up, Professor Do said. As they turned a corner, they came face to face with a group of Neo-Hadean agents. For a moment, both groups froze in surprise. Then Jia stepped forward, blaster raised. "I am Admiral Jia Song of the Rebellion Forces," she said in a voice that carried authority despite her young face. "And you are trespassing on my station." The agents raised their weapons, but before anyone could fire, a new sound filled the air, the roar of engines outside the station's windows. Everyone turned to look. Through the large viewing window, they saw ships appearing one by one, old but powerful warships bearing the symbol of the rebellion. "My fleet," Jia said with a smile. Right on time. The Neo-Hadean agents backed away as the rebellion ships surrounded the station. Jia used their moment of confusion to act. She fired her weapon, hitting 2 agents with stun blasts. Tak and Rek tackled the others. In seconds, all the agents were down. "We need to get to the command center now," Jia said. While they're distracted by the fleet, they moved quickly through the damaged hallways. More students had come out of their rooms, looking scared and confused. "Head to the main assembly hall," Jia ordered them. "Teacher Kim will lead you." "But who are you?" one student asked, not recognizing the small human girl in the oversized uniform. "That's Admiral Song," another student whispered in awe. "The strategist from our history books." Word spread quickly. Students looked at Jia with wide eyes as she passed. Some of the same aliens who had mocked her days earlier now moved aside with respect. When they reached the command center, the doors were locked. Rek placed a small explosive on the control panel. Everyone took cover as it blew open the doors. Inside, 6 Neo-Hadean agents and their leaders stood around the main controls. They turned with weapons ready. "Admiral Song," the leader said with a cruel smile, "you've saved us the trouble of hunting you down." "Commander Vex," Jia replied. "You look just like your grandfather." The commander's smile vanished. "My grandfather died in your rebellion. He died trying to protect a tyrant," Jia said. "And you're making the same mistake." "The Hadean Empire brought order to chaos," Vex snarled, "before you destroyed it all." "The Empire brought slavery and death," Jia countered. She stepped forward, seeming to grow taller despite her young body. "And I won't let you bring it back." Vex raised his weapon, but before he could fire, the whole station shook. The view screens showed rebellion ships firing on the Neo-Hadean vessels. "Your ships are surrounded," Jia said. "Surrender now." "Never," Vex replied. "Kill them all," he ordered his men. The room erupted in chaos. Blaster fire lit up the command center. Jia moved with surprising speed, rolling behind a console for cover. Tak used his 4 arms to great advantage, grabbing weapons and throwing equipment at the agents. Nari, who had been quiet and frightened, suddenly showed courage. She slid across the floor to reach the main controls. With quick fingers, she typed in commands. "What are you doing?" Professor Do called to her. "Activating the defense shields around the student areas," she replied. "Just in case." Jia smiled at the girl's quick thinking. Then she turned her attention back to the fight. She moved from cover to cover, firing with perfect aim. One by one, the agents fell. Soon only Commander Vex remained. He backed toward the emergency exit, his weapon pointed at Jia. "This isn't over, Admiral," he growled. "The Neo-Hadean movement has bases throughout the galaxy. We will rise again." "No," Jia said calmly. "You won't." She pressed a button on her medallion. A hologram appeared showing the locations of secret bases scattered across star systems. "I know every hiding place your movement has," she said. "I've already transmitted their coordinates to my fleet." Vex's face showed shock, then anger. With a yell, he fired at Jia. She ducked, and the blast hit the wall behind her. Before he could fire again, Tak tackled him from the side. The commander fell, his weapon skidding across the floor. 2 hours later, the Neo-Hadean ships had been captured. The agents on the station were all in custody. Students gathered in the assembly hall, watching as rebellion veterans and younger security officers worked together to restore order. Jia stood on the main bridge of her flagship. She had changed into a properly fitted uniform, though she still looked strange. A teenage girl commanding veteran soldiers 3 times her age. The Neo-Hadean bases are being secured as we speak, Admiral, an officer reported. Good, Jia nodded. She turned to find Tak and Neri watching her from the doorway. Come in, she invited them. Will you leave now? Neri asked sadly. For a while, Jia admitted. There's still work to do to make sure the Neo-Hadeans are truly finished. And then, Tak asked. Jia smiled. Then maybe I'll come back to school. I never did finish my education. You'll be treated differently now, Neri said. No one will dare tease you. That's ok, Jia replied. I've learned that appearances can be deceiving. The smallest person can change the galaxy. She looked out at the stars. Sometimes, all it takes is one human to overturn an empire.